All right, story number two. Big shout out to Elliott Wilson and Cameron. Now, Cameron got a lot going on. Cameron's got a lot going on over on It Is What It Is. I mean, they're currently embroiled in, I guess, another example that petty doesn't dissipate with age. Maybe that's a fair way to say it. I'll hiccup right there. But he's going back and forth with Jim Jones, and Mano was in it, and 50 Cent, and it's really interesting. And so I haven't covered that yet. I'm actually thinking about scripting something on that because I think there's some life lessons you could take away from this conversation. But so that's going on one side of the house that Cameron and Mace built. And on the other side of this is Elliott Wilson. We covered this the first week of the year on this channel. Elliott Wilson went on Rory and Mal. The last video, I kept saying Mal, saying it wrong. My apologies. There was no disrespect intended. But Rory and Mal to complain about streamers, modern journalists, and artists like Cameron and Mace doing terrible interviews and how he needs more credit because of all the work that he's put in. It wasn't his finest hour, and it definitely didn't seem like his most sober moment. That was a very loud, very wide-ranging conversation. Now, earlier this week, again, I didn't get a chance to get to this, and I do want to close this story here. Elliott actually went on to It Is What It Is, sort of to hash out what happened between the two of them, but also talk about where journalism is going. So let's take a look at this. I really got a kick out of this because I think, again, it is a learning moment for people who have reps in this space and how they can come across when they're ultimately just trying to extend their careers. But this back and forth between Cam and Mace, I'm just happy we all get to be witnesses. All right, so let's take a look.
Clarify that statement with him listening, of course, and explain how you feel about artists, athletes, and entertainers turning into media.
Well, I was embarrassed by my appearance on the Rory Mal thing. I think that caught me in a vulnerable moment where, being somebody that's been in hip hop media,
Caught me in a vulnerable moment. That is code word for drunk. 1 second applause.
Media since the early 90s, like you said. Seeing all the changes of like so much more streamers are now taking up the marketplace. So many athletes or artists are now in media. It's a little tough now for traditional journalists. So I think my frustration came out and I targeted Cam, and that wasn't fair. I was wrong for that. And now when I really look at it, Cam should walk around like he's Stephen A. Smith because he's building a sports empire on his own terms, right? He put his own money up. Mace put money up. They've done things the right way. They've empowered others, Michael Irvin, Mark Jackson, to even RIP OJ, and especially you, Treasure, like putting you on like a real journalist. So if you look at the way it is moving out here, you set the standard of how you should move out here. But, sometimes me as a traditional journalist, I get frustrated. And I just think I was a little bit out of pocket there, and I apologize. And that really wasn't where I was really coming from. I was more so pointing out the challenge.
1 second applause for accountability. And also, I said this in the video that I did covering this. I don't think Cam and Mace are the best examples of the challenges that Elliott is describing. I think there's a lot of other places you can put that energy. And so I'm glad that Elliott seems to recognize this too.
Challenges that today's journalists face in this marketplace where so much is like fame and celebrity, fueled. People want to be famous before they want to be true journalists,
Okay. Cam, how do you feel about Elliott's statement? Because, the argument can be you're not running around like Stephen A. Smith, you're running around like Cam, because that's who you are. So how do you feel about that? And then how do you feel about artists, athletes, and entertainers turning into media?
Right. First, when I'm looking at Elliott now, it's like, I didn't know your face looked like pepper jack turkey.
1 second applause for pepper jack turkey. Look at his face. God. Oh God.
Like that's what the texture of your skin looks like pepper jack turkey. Like you look like you sweat duck sauce.
You look like you sweat duck sauce. 1 second applause.
You look like a sloppy sandwich in the face. Pause, man. My bad. I didn't know. I never really looked at you like that. But as far as what Elliott said, I'm running around. I'm not trying to be anybody but myself. As far as comparing me to Stephen A. Smith, I take that as a compliment because he's kind of the standard. He's in negotiations for doing $100 million deal over a certain amount of years of time. And a certain amount of years, there's $100 million per year. But he's basically the standard when it comes to getting money in this field. And not only being the standard, he's a black man from New York, like I am. So I'm never trying to be anybody else, but if you're going to compare me to somebody who's at the top of the game in this thing that we're doing, and I've only been doing this since, it's going on, it's going to be 2 years in March this year coming up. So if you're comparing me to that, it isn't like he said a podcaster or somebody else. I didn't get to it. When I heard it, to be honest with you, I really wasn't too upset about it. I was more like, where'd that come from? But I mean, over the years, I've known Elliot. We haven't really talked a lot and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I seen like a few things from his interview stat. He's like his relationship with Jay-Z and all this. And I didn't know, to be honest with you, I didn't really know you had a great relationship with Jay-Z. I didn't know. I didn't pay attention to it that much because from what I remember is with Elliot is that he ran Double XL when I was coming up. And if you get the cover, you get the cover. If you don't, you got to move on to the next thing. So I never put too much faith into one magazine because there's different outlets prior to the internet as well. Magazine covers were definitely an important. And Double XL, Vanessa too, shout out to Vanessa. They supported me a lot through my career. So I have nothing bad to say about that at all. But as far as comparing me to Stephen A. Smith, to be honest with you, I wasn't offended. I was more just confused, like, where's this going? As far as athletes and entertainers becoming podcasters or analysts or anything of that nature, with me, it's more about looking at the climate. It isn't about necessarily being a journalist, because Elliot made a great point with his opening statement. People may want to be more famous than doing the due diligence or homework or something that a topic is. But me, you have to look where the climate is going. And when I heard his interview, to be honest with you, I said to myself, this sounds like the guy who used to own Blockbuster. And he's mad he can't sell VHS tapes.
Exactly. Elliot came across as a laggard in that conversation. Now, I think that was a really classic response. Classic response, Cam. 1 second applause. I mean, he did say he looked like deli meat, but everything else after that was really dope. Now, there's another part of this conversation that stood out to me too, and this is where they really talk about what journalism is in 2025. Now, I was on Rap Latte with Torre and King Green. 1 second applause to Torre and King Green and Rap Latte. And, Torre's on my Mount Rushmore, and that's the school of journalism that I'm from. But I think the conversation around journalism tends to be very limited in terms of what journalism is. There's video journalism, there's documentary style journalism, there's editorial journalism. Journalism can be an investigation, it could be, an exclusive interview, it could be a think piece, it could be a lot of different things, right? And so it's a really wide tent. And I think where this conversation tends to live these days is, who is someone who is traditionally viewed as a trusted source? And that is one of the biggest differences that I see in the way that people talk about journalism or weaponize the word journalism. And I'm not meaning that as with me being a journalism, but a lot of criticism I'll get is that if I give my opinion on something, I will have people that say, you're supposed to be a journalist. You have too many opinions. Well, journalists can have opinions too. So the word is I think very tied to a particular way of interacting with content, conversation, and storytelling, but it truthfully is broader. It can be broader than just you're writing a straight news story, all facts, no opinion. There's more to journalism, right? If you're doing a straight news story, it's a news story. If you're adding opinion, it's opinionated news. It's still news, but it's news with an opinion. So it doesn't necessarily make you less of a journalist, right? Because journalism, again, is a whole wide-ranging thing. It's a very big tent. And so they get into what they think journalism is in 2025, and I found this pretty interesting. Let's take a look.
Traditional journalism is going.
Well, with social media, everything's going to be limited to people doing interviews or anything like that. Like, for instance, we'll before we get to hip-hop, we'll do sports.
I mean, I think I disagree already. There's some really good social media accounts that do a great job of putting together threads in a journalistic fashion. I look at those threads all the time on Twitter, for example. You have people who do the chronological order of a certain topic. I just looked at one the other day, the chronological order of Doechii versus Azalea Banks, right? And so to a degree, that is a type of journalism that is separate from what Cam just said, exclusive interviews.
Before you had to have a Howard Cosell, I know you don't know who Howard Cosell is, but or a Brian Gumbel or a Rashad Ahmad Rashad. And now you could just go on your phone and be like, this coach is bugging the fuck out. I don't want to be here. We just talked about it. Tyreek Hill talking about him. He puts on his in his Instagram picture, his face on Antonio Pierce's body when he left Tampa Bay.
Antonio Brown, yeah.
Pardon me. Antonio Pierce just got fired. Pardon me. Antonio Brown. So you don't have to necessarily wait to do an interview to where coming up, you'd be like, damn, I want to get the cover of the Source. I want to get the cover of the Vibe. I want to get the cover of the Double XL. And now if you got millions of followers, it doesn't really matter. It's the same thing like with radio. You wanted Funkmaster Flex to play a song. Shout out to Funkmaster Flex too, because he helped boost my career. You want the #1 DJ in California to play a song. Nah, it don't matter now, because now what niggas is chasing is what you're doing. And it all bases, a lot of these things are based on analytics. How many Instagram followers you have, Twitter followers, Facebook friends, TikToks, Snapchat followers, so on and so forth. So even sitting here listening to Elliot and you know, don't never downplay yourself, my nigga. If you think you're the best, you think you're the best. I think I'm the best at everything I do. If I don't do it, if I'm not doing it, then I ain't the best at it. I like to be the best at everything I'm doing. Like, to me, I know we will talk afterwards, but like, even when you use the word journalism, what does that really mean? Because you write better than me? I don't really think so. Do you do a better interview? Can you interview somebody better than me? Not really, because if you're talking about hip hop artists, I'm more relatable to them than you are. You're the guy with the pen and the pad behind the thing like this, and I'm like, yo, I went through some shit like that, nigga. Yeah, remember? Yeah, my first concert when I had this, but you've been around the culture for a long time, so it isn't like, you know, I'm not saying that being facetious. I'm saying that more as that's been your perspective in the last 30 years of what you've been doing, to where I seen what you said. It's not fair because Kim got relationships with artists and he could get the interview before this. What I would recommend, and matter of fact, I'll say it now because I don't know if that's for more questions, but it's more about to where people have to like you instead of the story you tell. My personal opinion is because you can sit there and tell somebody else's story, but who would they like it to hear it from? Mace, Stat, Snoop Dogg, Brian Gump, whoever, you know what I'm saying? So that's what it's basically about to me.
Exactly. And I've made this point too in the initial video. I call it the fuck with you, Aaron. It really doesn't matter how good you are at anything as long as people fuck with you. Right. And I don't feel like this journalism space is a space where we can discount people's contributions to forwarding a conversation, which I think at the core of journalism is an element of forwarding a conversation, informing the people, you know, about what's real, what's right, what's true, or making people laugh and being entertaining. I don't know if we can draw the same lines because people aren't necessarily vying to be journalists. They're not, you know, they want to be streamers. They want to be themselves and get paid for it. We've seen this evolution ever since reality shows. You used to have to be an actor, and then all of a sudden you just got to be lucky enough to get put in the real world house, you know? So I don't know if everybody's even trying to be a journalist, but Cam makes a great point. Can Elliot really write better than Cam? Now, I know that I don't think, I'd be surprised if Cam could do a think piece or just have a flair to paragraphs in a similar way. But I know that Cam has written platinum songs and platinum records. I know that. That's still writing. 1 second applause. So I appreciated where Cam's coming from with this. Let's take a look at Elliot's reaction.
And when Elliot's talking about what he's about to do, and good luck on what you're about to do, but waiting around for somebody to give you an interview, it might not work. You look at somebody like Academics, right? Academics ain't waiting for no motherfucking interview. And I know some rappers don't like him, some rappers do, whatever, but he don't give a fuck. He get up there every day and tell you what's going on in hip hop, this, that, and the third, et cetera. You look at somebody like Joe Budden's podcast. I don't remember seeing the guests up there. It's his staff, et cetera. Waiting on guests, them days is over. So it's more about capturing the moment. Even like this show right here, Talk with Flea. My man Larry will be here, a couple of my homies or whatever, but I don't necessarily need a guest to do this show. So I think that's what it's more about, building a personality that you are, so people will like to hear from you. And then when they like you, you can bring out the things to the table. That'll make artists want to come fuck with you. Like, yo, what's up, man? Yo, that nigga show is funny. Yo, he's a cool dude. I like his style. I think I will give him an interview. You know what I'm saying? So that's my opinion on that.
Point. And then before I move on, Elliot, do you have a rebuttal to that? And then I'm just going to ask, do you feel like you're a better interviewer than Cam?
I'm not trying to battle. Like what Cam said is true. I think artists to artists always have that, connection, right? So, they've been through the trenches together. Like, again, as Cam said, I'm a civilian, I'm a journalist, I'm the outside of documenting. So yeah, peer-to-peer is always going to be special. They created literally interview magazines so other people could, famous people could talk to each other because there's a camaraderie there. But, I think Cam's right also. Like, I can't be relying on the big interview. This isn't the big interview era anymore.
Right.
It's about content creation. It's about, adapting to what's going on. I think I do that through social media. And I got this show getting called The Bigger Picture, where it's a debate show. It's me, Jeremy, Hacker, DJ Head. And we've done 30 episodes, nice little steady start. We're averaging about 50K to 100K per episode. We have had no guests. So that's the first thing I've ever done that hasn't had no guests driven. So I think that's, like, to Cam's point, you can't be relying anymore on that. You have to move like academics does, in the sense of, like, documenting culture and not necessarily think you're going to get the big interview. So that's something I've adjusted to, and I'm adjusting to now.
Got it.
1 second applause for adjusting. I mean, one of the things that I've received a lot of criticism for when we first started doing the breakdown at DX over those years is that people were telling me all the time that people have short attention spans, and they're also telling me that I need to have guests or more guests, right? And I was always a big proponent of something Charlamagne says a lot. If you need guests for your show, you don't really have a show. And so this is an era of content creation. This is an era where everyone has an opportunity to be that person that people like to hear the news from. And Elliot can make that shift in my opinion, easier fashion than almost anybody else who's out here. Almost anyone else who's out here, because of, one, his entire history, 30 years plus of being in this game. 2, his reflexive knowledge of the culture where it's been. And 3, his access and proximity to celebrity. So, I'm glad that this seems like it's come to a close. This little back and forth between Elliot and Cam. I think Elliot looks really defeated in this conversation. I'm not sure if he's just tired or if he landed somewhere. But I did hear a whole lot of self-awareness, and hopefully we'll see what Elliot does with his Elliott Wilson experience, which I'm a big fan of Crown, so I'm excited to see what he does with that too. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section. My name is Justin Hunt. Like, subscribe to the channel, follow at The Company Man on everything. It's all happening.
Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. The mathematical breakdown of this mighty game of rap we in. It's boom bapping. Systematical culture views that's radical, it's all happening. Shaking hands and dapping it. Life through the lens of hip hop, from trip hop to yes, y'all, you don't stop, you don't stop. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening.